By the time my own son stood across the courtroom from me, I didn't recognize the boy who'd once helped me mend fence line in the rain. He wasn't alone. Behind him sat a developer's lawyer, a leather folder, and an offer worth $20 million. The offer was to take my farm, to sell what 4 generations had bled into this soil, to sign away land my grandfather cleared with a horse, and a single-minded refusal to quit. And the signature they needed to make it all legal, the one that would end it, was mine. This is the story of the farm my family tried to sell out from under me, and the line in an 1889 deed none of us knew was waiting. Elias Brandt had turned Ray Callahan down 3 times before the developer ever mentioned it to anyone else in the family. Callahan had spent 2 years quietly assembling parcels around the Brandt farm, buying up neighbors one at a time, never showing his hand, never letting word get around about how much land he actually controlled, until it was too late for anyone to hold out for a better price. By the time he finally knocked on Elias's door, he owned nearly everything for miles in every direction except the 300 acres sitting dead center of it all, the one piece that made his whole project whole. Elias said no the first time politely. The second time flatly. The third time, he didn't bother opening the door past the screen. He had buried his father and his grandfather on the ridge behind that house. He intended to be buried there himself. $20 million didn't move that math even slightly. So Ray Callahan did what developers do when a landowner won't fold. He stopped talking to Elias, and he started talking to Elias's son. The son was 29. He'd grown up watching this farm eat his father's back a little more every year, and his mother's patience along with it. He'd left for the city the day he turned 18 and never looked back. Built a real career, bought a house with a mortgage he could actually afford without praying for a good calving season first. When Callahan's lawyer laid the number in front of him, $20 million, split evenly between him and his father, the son didn't see a farm. He saw the future his father had never once let him have. The papers arrived on a Tuesday. In the matter of Brandt versus Brandt, Elias read them at his kitchen table, the same table his own father had eaten at for 60 years, and understood, somewhere around the second paragraph, that his son was suing him, not over affection, over an asset. The complaint called it financial negligence, the legal argument that Elias was mismanaging land the whole family had a right to profit from, and that a court should force its sale. His lawyer was a young woman named Rachel Dorn, sharp and quietly furious on his behalf in a way she never let show in front of him. She read the complaint twice before she asked the question that changed everything. "Mr. Brandt, do you have the original deed to this land?" Elias went to the steel box in the hall closet, the one his mother had kept, and her mother before her, passed down the way some families pass down silver instead of paper. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth gone soft with age, was the deed from 1889, written in the looping formal hand of his great-great-grandfather, ink faded to the color of weak tea. Rachel read it once, then again slower. Then she looked up at him, with an expression he'd remember for the rest of his life. "Mr. Brandt," she said, "your land can't be sold." He assumed she meant it kindly, a lawyer's way of saying he'd win. He told her everything could be sold, if you offered someone enough money. She turned the deed toward him, and tapped one line near the bottom. The 1889 deed hadn't just handed the land to his family outright. It had handed it over conditionally, a reversionary clause, granting the land only for so long as it shall remain a family farm, worked and occupied by the direct descendants of the grantee. The instant that condition broke, through sale, through foreclosure, through a court-ordered settlement, it didn't matter which. The land reverted automatically back to the original grantor's line. Not a lawsuit, not a negotiation. Automatic. Elias's great-great-grandfather had built a trapdoor directly into the paper itself, 136 years before anyone in the family would ever need it. The room was quiet when Rachel Dorn stood up. She didn't argue about fairness. She didn't argue about what the son deserved or didn't. She simply entered the 1889 deed into evidence and read the clause aloud, slowly enough that nobody in the room could pretend they'd missed it. "Your Honor," she said, "this land cannot be sold by Mr. Brandt. It cannot be awarded to his son, either, not through this suit, not through any settlement this court could order. It was granted conditionally in 1889, on the condition that it remain a family farm, worked and occupied by direct descendants. The moment it passes into any other hands, through this sale or any other, it reverts automatically to the heirs of the original grantor. She let that sit for a second. Which means, Your Honor, the only way anyone gets this land is if no one gets it at all. The developer's lawyer asked for 2 weeks to verify it independently. The judge granted the delay. 2 weeks later, Ray Callahan's own title company confirmed it in writing. The clause was real, it had never been formally released by any prior generation of Brants, and it was fully enforceable. No bank in the country would finance a development sitting on ground that could legally disappear out from under it the moment a non-family shovel broke soil. Callahan closed his folder without another offer and walked out. His entire project quietly bent itself around 300 stubborn acres, sitting in the exact center of it, land no amount of money could ever touch again. Elias's son sat in the back row through all of it and didn't look at his father once. Elias didn't look at him either, not until he was on his way out. Then he stopped beside his son's seat and set one thing down on the bench between them. A key to the farmhouse door. He didn't say anything else. A place is only a legacy if somebody's willing to carry it, and his son had already made that choice, out loud, in a courtroom, with a stranger's $20 million in the room. The land would go, eventually, to whichever Brant actually understood what it was. Elias still farms those 300 acres. The same spring-fed fields his great-great-grandfather cleared by hand still feed the cattle carrying the Brant brand, same as they have for 5 generations now. The original deed stays exactly where it's always been, in the steel box in the closet. But there's a copy now, too, framed, hanging in the farmhouse hallway, where anyone who visits has to walk past it. Not out of pride, as a reminder. His own grandfather used to say, the land never belonged to any of them, that every Brant who ever worked it was just holding it for the next one in line. Elias used to nod along to that, and privately think it was a sad, small way to look at something you'd spent your whole life building. He understands it differently now. Some things aren't owned, they're kept. And the distance between those two words is the whole distance between a farm that dies with one bad signature and a farm that outlives every signature anyone ever tries to put to it. The developer's gone, his son's gone, at least for now, and the door's still open whenever that changes. The land is still here. The land remembers. The farmer's ledger. More stories from the land.